Hello everyone, welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I am your host Deepak. Today we have the privilege of hosting a prolific and highly recognized global trust expert, Dr. David Horsager. Dr. David is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, researcher, and sought-after consultant and speaker. After decades of research and work with top organizations, leaders, and politicians, he has released his most comprehensive book yet, Trust Matter More Than Ever, 40 proven trust tools to lead better, grow faster, and build trust now. Dr. David has advised organizations ranging from Delta Airlines, McDonald's, FedEx, and Toyota to the New York Yankees, Walmart, Zoom, MIT, and global governments. In today's episode, we will dwell into his newest book, Trust Matter More Than Ever, 40 Proven Trust Tools to Lead Better, Grow Faster, and Build Trust Now. Dr. David, it's a true delight to have you on this podcast. We are thrilled and honored to have you with us today.
Thank you, Deepak. Great to be with you. Hello, everyone.
Dr. David, in your book, you emphasize that trust is crucial in today's world. Can you start by explaining why trust is more important now than ever before?
Well, it's interesting to ask that because, as I often say, many people said to me, trust, it's so timely. Look at the world we're in. But of course, it's timeless. It always has been important. It's always been crucial. It's always been critical. And the difference today is trust matters because for a couple of reasons. Where you have less trust, there's a bigger impact. For instance, if a leader, in the old days, if technology lost trust, it impacted that little part of the world. Now technology losing trust can impact the whole grid over a massive part of the world. A leader that had less influence in the old days, so they just affected that group. Now a leader that loses trust can affect a whole economic market or a whole part of the world. So because our world has become smaller, trust or a lack of trust just has an amplified or an accentuated impact. So it's true, trust has always mattered, but it does matter now more than ever because the influence of it impacts more people faster.
Yeah. You mentioned that human connection is vanishing and that is every person is hardwired to measure trust. So how has the decline in human connection affected trust in professional and personal settings?
Well, it's interesting. What we've seen is, and I have the book right here. And so if you're looking at it, but human connection, what we've seen is many things after COVID went to, virtual and remote. And what we've seen is actually in the research, it's true. Some people do need to stay remote, but it has been terrible for people. Humans are made for connection. And so, like I say in the book, in the first part there, that basically even as babies we're wired for human connection, but we're having less of it, and it's impacting our emotionally, physically, and in every other way. So basically we need human connection. We need human interaction. Here's one other reason that human connection matters as far as trust. We went through this period of trust where we didn't trust people because we didn't know them. They're over from that mountain, or they look differently, or we didn't trust them because we didn't know them. They're close by. We know how they act. Then we went to institutional trust. And institutional trust, it was a good thing in that institutions, you could trust the institution of the government and have one bad politician, or you could trust education system and have one bad teacher. But then institutional trust tanked and it fell steeply. And then we went to, distributed trust like Airbnb or blockchain, and what we saw in the research last year is trust came back to more personal than ever, because think of things like deep fakes and to trust something, we want to see it, we want to touch it, we want to know. We don't trust, if it's removed through technology or other things as fast as we trust personal. So connection is critical in that we see the health disaster that's happened when people don't have connection, but we also see the slowness of business and economies when we can't have some personal interaction.
Yeah. Could you elaborate on the 8-pillar framework you describe in your book? And what are these pillars and how do they contribute to building trust?
Yeah. So the 8 pillars, this goes back to my graduate work a couple decades ago. So Trust Edge, my first bestseller, talked about the 8 pillars, and then we touched on them again in Trusted Leader in a different way. And actually, this book, even though it's much different and has so many more, all these tools that people can take away and use tomorrow morning, it still comes back to here's how trust is built. These 8 pillars, now under them, how do we build them? And that's the tools. So the 8 pillars of trust are, first of all, I should say this. First, we have to understand that a lack of trust is our biggest expense. It really is the why. We don't have leadership issues. We follow a leader we trust. We don't have sales issues. We buy from people we trust. Innovation only goes up when the team trusts each other. Otherwise, they won't share ideas. Learning only goes up in a classroom when we increase trust in the professor or the content or the safety, psychological safety or trust of the room. Diversity, equity, inclusion on its own tends to put people against each other unless they increase trust. Then they get enormous benefits. So we have to first see that trust is critical. Now, if it is so critical, how do we actually build it? Is it just character? Is it just this kind of, it turns out these 8 pillars are the way trust is built globally. And we contextualize maybe based on parts of the world or who we're talking to, but it always comes back to these 8. So these 8, here they are. And in the English language, they start with a C word, a C for clarity, but don't think of them as some kind of cutesy list. They each represent a very important research funnel. So here they are. Clarity. People trust the clear and mistrust or distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex. Whenever we overcomplexify, we lose trust because we lose clarity. Clarity wins. The leader that's clear about the vision might be followed. The manager that's clear about expectations, might be trusted. The salesperson might be clear about the wrong things. They're clear about how cool they are or how long they've been in business, and nobody cares. Once they got clear about the benefits of that product or service, to me, I bought. The teacher that was clear about assignments, the students didn't hate, right? Clarity wins. Number 1 is clarity. Number 2 is compassion. We trust those that care beyond themselves. We won't want to be accountable to or follow someone if they don't care beyond themselves. Even if it's not about me, they care. If they only care about themselves, we don't tend to trust them. Number 3 is character. We trust those that do what's right over what's easy. And of course, character is critical, but it's not everything. Because I might trust Deepak to take my kids to the ball game because of character or compassion, but not give me a root canal or brain surgery, right? Because of competency, as far as I know. So number 4 is competency. The next pillar is commitment. We trust those that stick in the face of difficult things. They stay committed. They make promises and keep them. This is the pillar where we find the process for rebuilding trust and also the accountability framework. And the next pillar after commitment is connection, the willingness and ability to connect and collaborate with others. If we see a company that has siloing or high ego or they won't work together, we see a lack of trust, and that hurts production. The next pillar is contribution. That's contributing results. You might have compassion, you might have character, but if you don't contribute the results I expected or I asked for or I bought or I paid for, I won't trust you even if you have compassion or character. So the final pillar is consistency, and that is sameness. The only way to build a reputation is consistency, showing up the same way every time. The only way to build a brand is sameness. We have a same feel. We act the same way no matter what the circumstances are. So consistency, by the way, is trusted for good or bad, isn't it? If you're late all the time, I will trust you to be late. So, good or bad. But those are the 8, and they definitely work together. So you might lose clarity. You might have a clear vision, but if you don't share it consistently every 14 days, you just lost clarity because you weren't consistent. Or you might say, we have commitment issues. It might be because they don't feel cared about or compassion. But it is these 8. What we found is if people drill down to these 8, they solve the real issue. Many people say it's a leadership or it's referral. You don't get referrals with referrals. You increase trust, that gets referrals. You don't get engagement with engagement. You have to increase increase trust, and that leads to engagement. And so when we define by these instead of saying leadership or even communication, it's a communication issue. It never is at the core. It's the type, because communication is happening all the time. Clear is trusted, unclear isn't. Compassionate is trusted. Hateful isn't. Honest is trusted. Dishonest isn't. So it's the type, and you can get to these 8. That really helps people solve the real issue.
Very nice. Very insightful. Your book outlines 40 trust tools. Could you highlight
Yes.
a few of these tools and explain how they can be applied immediately, to improve trust within teams and organizations?
There are many. Yep, there's so many, and they're really actionable. But I'll give a few very quickly since we were talking about clarity. One idea is what we found is under the clarity pillar, messages by the senior leadership team or strategic plans that have values. If those messages are not MRA, memorable, repeatable, and actionable, they don't matter today. Most people's values, most missions aren't memorable, repeatable, and actionable. And so people don't make decisions by them. And that's the only reason to have those strategic messages. So memorable, repeatable, actionable. I give some examples of that in the book. I'll give some simple ones. Another one is clarity of expectations. We find companies so often employees frustrated because they don't have clear expectations, so they don't feel like they can win. So here's a simple way. It's a simple model. ODC, not OCD, ODC. O, outcome. As a manager, am I absolutely clear about the outcome? So not clear about how they have to do it, but what's the outcome look like? What does that end project look like? Or what does that step look like? What's the outcome? D is deadline. Many leaders don't give a deadline because they're afraid it will lead to conflict. The problem is not giving a deadline leads to conflict because, I want to see that soon. Well, what does that mean to you? No, I want to see that Friday morning before the meeting at 10 a.m. That's a deadline. The C in ODC stands for clarifying questions. Are you clear about this? Are we clear? Deepak, do you understand? Yep, I understand. This is what you want. Here's the outcome. Yep, okay, we're on the same page. But letting them share back or ask questions, clarifying questions, that's ODC. There's so many of them. Another one would be the relevancy questions. So if you're giving a message as a leader or anyone, make sure it's relevant to your audience. How do you do that? You could do it. You ask yourself these 2 questions. You make sure you're answering these 2 questions. So with this content, whatever you're sharing, you're asking or you're sharing, once you've shared that content, so what this means to you is, or us is, and so what this means now is. So let's say, hey, we've got a new opportunity on the team. So we're going to take all the budget from this to this, and we're going to have this be our key focus. And we said we were going to do this, but we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do this. So what this means to us is I expect your focus to be on this, and 10% of you have to stay on this one thing because blah, 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 blah. What this means right now is you're going to stop doing this and you're going to start doing this. And all of a sudden that message that you gave became relevant to them. Here's our vision. So what this means to us is here's our priorities. Here's our budget. So what that means to us is, hey, we're losing market share. What that means to us is we're going to cut 10% of our employees. It's just the way it is. That means right now we need, if we can just in our minds answer that, people stay engaged with the message we're giving. Those are 3 little ideas under clarity. Just to give you, if people are watching instead of just listening, in this book, you can see how neat the design is. We had someone say it was the most beautiful business book they'd ever seen. But I'll show you, you have the tools section under each of them. One of the really neat ones is the engagement state, or actually the counterforce wheel. And I think I have it here. Thought I had it here. Yeah. So the new counterforce wheel. So the counterforces that you find that are pushing against trust in your organization, it gives you the wheel to kind of think, okay, so what are we? We have corruption, we have arrogance, we have disloyalty, we have apathy. Oh, apathy. I should go to the compassion pillar. Well, how should I solve that? And they can take that counterforce and fill, with trust. So consultants, CEOs, senior leaders can use this as a manual, as a guide, and go, okay, here's my problem. In fact, another really cool thing about this in this book is in the index under the 40 tools, you can just look up your problem and say, my messages aren't landing. Use number two questions for relevancy. I want to better care for my team. Use tool number 10, laws of compassion. I want to appreciate people better. Number 11, SPA method. We've got conflict. How do we increase trust even in conflict? Oh, use tool number 12. Or, how do I scale learning and development? Many people have problems through big organizations actually cascading leadership development. Okay, here's the 10-step process for cascading people development initiatives. So it just gives those. So, okay, there's the tool. They might go back. Here's the tool. As you know, tools, you might have some favorites. Okay, I want this. And you want the right one for the right thing. So it's like, I need a shovel for that. Oh, I need a hammer for that. So you got all 40 tools right there.
Wonderful. Very, very, very wonderful, sir. So what are some common challenges leaders face when they're trying to build or rebuild trust?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I'll give you something about rebuilding trust. And in here, one of the tools is the 10-step process for rebuilding trust. And it's got a process for whether you're an individual or an organization. But I think this could be enlightening. And that is, how do I rebuild trust if I've made a mistake or need to rebuild trust? All of us have done it. We've made a mistake and we've had to rebuild trust. And I think one thing that people don't understand is they think they rebuild trust when they apologize. And they never do. And I'm not saying not to apologize, be humble. Of course, that can open up communication, but you don't ever rebuild trust on the apology. The only way to rebuild trust is to make and keep a new commitment. And so that's one idea. If you're rebuilding trust, the only way you will ever rebuild trust, if you have a chance, is to make and keep a new commitment.
Yeah. You suggest that trust can help organizations grow faster. So how does trust directly impact organizational growth and performance?
Well, it speeds everything up for one thing. And, we have a swish slide in here, for those that are can see the book. It really comes down to this. When trust goes up, output, morale, retention, productivity, innovation, loyalty go up, costs, problem, skepticism go down. But let's get really simple. Without the research, you can say, well, let's take a team. That company has a team. They need to innovate. What if someone doesn't trust the team? Then they won't share ideas, and that slows everything down. Or if you think of, a team member you trust, and you think, oh, they've got my back. I can say it once they've committed. It's good. But you have someone you don't trust. The cost in time and productivity is enormous because you're double checking. You're wondering, are you sure? You're putting resources toward all that double checking. So anytime there's less trust, everything takes more time, more double checking, more stress, more mind share. And so higher trust always leads to more productivity. As far as attrition is concerned, if you're losing one person that you want to keep because of a lack of trust, that probably is costing about 3.5 times salary. So you can be at $1 million US in 2 or 3 people. So the costs are very high where there's a lack of trust. And, we share referrals based on trust. So if you think about this, many people buy on referrals. So if you said to do it, I just do it. I don't check everything. But if I don't have a referral, it's going to slow down the sale because I'm like, okay, are you writing this out? Do I have a lawyer? Is this right? Are you for sure going to deliver all this? But if I have somebody that I trust that shared, nope, they had a good experience, done.
Yeah. Reflecting on your own experiences and research, what has been the most surprising and impactful finding about trust that you have encountered?
Oh boy, that's too much. There's too many things. I think I'll give you a few.
Sure.
One, I think people seeing that a lack of trust really is their biggest expense. And I think also seeing that trust really is always the root cause and the leading indicator. It's a trust issue, not an engagement issue. It's a trust issue, not a leadership issue. When I start to see it as a trust issue, I can solve the real issue against the framework. That's what we've noticed. And we've had The military say they dropped suicide rates. We've had people say it tripled their sales. We've had one of the biggest companies in the world say they increased engagement scores for the first time in 14 years. We've had people say it saved their marriage. It's been personal. It's been, business. But, I've seen it happen. Of course, I think it's changed me along the way. So I think a couple other ideas. It's not a soft skill. It actually affects the bottom line more than anything else. I think maybe this quote that I often say, it's the little things done consistently that make the biggest difference, is another finding. I keep seeing that. It's little things, not this big thing, little things done consistently that build trust.
Dr. David, my last question. For listeners who are eager to start implementing trust building strategies, what are the first steps they should take care after reading your book?
Well, I think there's a strategy in this book called How. And what I would do is, and there is a free assessment. I think you can assess against the pillars, but what I would do is take the pillars, once you understand them, look at the tools, and if something jumps out to you, just use that. But if you don't know where to start, just think of your own business or relationships or life, or maybe it's a relationship with your daughter or something, and just say, where do I most want to solve something? And then say, take that idea, the strategy, the how strategy, and use it to get to something you can do today or tomorrow. That strategy gives so much clarity and so much hope to people, because they can actually use it. And that strategy is number 8 in the book. But if you just think of, okay, what's a problem you have? Use number 8 to solve for that. Like, okay, what could I do? Because that pushes people to get something they can actually act on today or tomorrow.
Thank you, Dr. David, for joining us on today's podcast and sharing your invaluable insights on one of the most pivotal topics of our time, that is trust. Thank you for your time and expertise. We are excited about your forthcoming book, and I am eagerly awaiting its release in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deepak.